Back to Behind the Scenes, a tournament talk show. I am joined here today with a bunch of new faces as well as familiar faces. So I'm your host, Rain, and I do commentary for Even T. And we will go around, I'm going to say go around the circle or go around the room and introduce everyone. If you want to start, Aleksi.
Yeah, indeed. Hi, I'm Aleksi Aksan. I'm one of the most recent additions to the commentary team, and I'm our new stats wizard, apparently.
Equalizers?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm Equalizer in game Aulorana Equalisers, and I am one of the two main streamers for the Event Championships.
Battledog?
Hi, I'm Baldog. I play on Tranquility with the Tuskers. I mainly do sort of low sec solo PvP on there. And for the Event stuff, I'm team captain for Team Johnny.
Loca?
Hello everyone, I'm Loca. I'm the marketing manager for Eventi. In game, I fly with Laserhawks, and I am on the Power Ducks team in the minor league.
And Jose.
Hey there, I'm Jose. I'm team captain for the Alliance team, A Band Apart, and Charlatans here in the Event season.
Alright, and I know we have Bei Artjay on the screen, and he said he was going to be late, so he might join us halfway through. But to kind of kick things off, what do you guys think of the new prize skin for the both the major leagues and the minor leagues, the IGC Raven?
So excited. So looking forward to getting my hands on one of those Raven skins. It's really nice that we get to have these unique battleship skins, and they look so good. They look so good, especially with the new Cormorant and the skins that go with that as well. That other bundle they all look magnificent. I can't wait.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that everybody loves the new skins, especially the Raven, considering it's got the nice V on it rather than just like the slash down the side like you see on the other ones. So definitely good.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
And Equalizers, I think it was you who pointed it out to me, but I think IGC actually accepted Even T into the lore. So IGC it's like Intergalactic Gaming Commission within the EVE universe, and I believe they said they were like there was like a lore blog or something saying that they were working with Even T. So I think they've actually officially claimed Even T into the lore of EVE Online, which is super amazing.
So I mean, in one of the posts that CCP made on their like community site, basically the entire article of the news of the new skins, instead of them going like, yeah, you know, Event is getting new skins, it was all kind of from a lore point of view, with IGC supporting, or more like, yeah, supporting the long-lasting kind of like cooperative work with Event. So yeah, I mean, I was really excited when I was reading that, because like we kind of Event now is officially part of the lore, and I know a lot of guys on Slack were like, "You guys want Eve?" And we were like, "Yeah, I guess in a way."
The best thing about that post was that now Nash is officially a roleplay god.
He doesn't even have to roleplay; he just is in there.
Yeah, they named him specifically, and I know on our Slack I was like, guys, now we all have to roleplay as though we're like official staff within the EVE universe or whatever. And then Jintan, who is known for like kind of being with the role players of Pravi, like spoke up and said he'd teach us all how to roleplay properly.
I mean, to be fair, it's not exactly role-playing if you are being yourself. Since, like, we are ourselves now in the game, next to our alter egos, kind of. So we actually have a double presence in the game.
Does this mean that if I fly the APOC with the IGC skin, I have to put some slaves in the cargo hold?
I don't know, but like my character in Eve is a dude, and then Equalizers, yours is a chick. Same with the Locas. So now you gotta play like your alter ego or whatever.
But do you know? Because, like, it's Nash. I mean, yeah, you do. Well,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. I'm okay with it.
There were many mistakes made when the character Loca Fappuccino was introduced to the EVE universe. I think it's safe to say, and role playing as a chick is going to be one of them for me. But I think it's really cool that we actually get to be in the E-Floor as well. We should really thank the IGC CEO, Come At Me Bro, for the partnership we've now created.
To be honest, I'm not quite sure how you can include what amounts to a horny barista in E-Law, but hey, whatever works.
Oh my gosh. Alright, but moving quickly along, because I don't know if we want to spend the day talking about role playing. As much fun as I think that would be. What'd you guys think of last week? Were you all there for the major leagues? Did most of you watch it or catch up later?
Nope. I suck.
Wow.
I was obviously playing there, so.
Yeah, same. We've been playing 2 matches there, and I watched the other matches afterwards.
I was gonna say, what'd you guys think? Was there any...
Some very interesting stuff. So we had a lot of Hyperion versus Rock matches, which I completely didn't expect. And I think almost all the time the Rock won, which shows that you can't stop the Rock.
Is that match with your...
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is that match with the stats, Aleksi? I know you were running the stats for everything.
Oh, I am. I specifically didn't look at Hyperion versus Rock for the Blaster matchup, but overall we had a lot of Shield versus Armor matchups, which went vastly in favour of the Shields. We ended up with 5 wins for Shields in that, against only 1 win for Armor, which is a bit painful, but...
I think that was brought up last week too, how generally in what did you call it, like those longer lasting fights, generally Armor usually wins more than Shield. But then I think most of those matches, yeah, I remember the commentators saying they were surprised that Shield actually won and that people were able to pull it off.
Yeah, I kind of think the interesting thing from last week was that we saw a lot of Shield comps from the blue band side of the draw compared to red, because traditionally red's Shield and blue's been Armor in the past.
I was actually surprised that so many people were surprised about that, because in practice we usually ended up with blue as Shield and Armor as red. So I'm not sure if we did something wrong in practice, but that's what we practiced. And yeah, then everybody was saying they are surprised that suddenly red is Shield, red is Armor and blue is Shield. And I couldn't really follow that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where people kind of traditionally thought Armor was stronger than Shield because the Execure is probably one of the stronger Logis sort of thing. And as blue, you obviously get to control the cruiser pick. But nowadays, things seem to have swung a little bit because Shield seems to have a lot more options than in what they can do with their comps anyway compared to Armor. So obviously, blue generally tends to be able to pick what they want, and red has to kind of respond a little bit.
Do you feel this is a hot topic at the moment? It's something that a lot of the teams are discussing at the moment. Do you feel like blue team is stronger than red before you actually begin the match, or is it kind of even?
So I think blue is a lot stronger due to 2 things. First, you have the first Logi pick, and you can actually, if red bans a Logi, you can force him to go no Logi. And you can, for example, ban the Scythe or the Orc, and then red has to pick the Frigate and the Destroyer before you actually reveal your cruiser choice as blue, so you can kind of trap him there. And additionally, you have the first battlecruiser pick, which get a lot stronger with the links, and you can counter the battleship pick too, because you get that last. So that's 3 things that make blue team a little bit stronger than red.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting stats that we don't have at the minute that would be nice to see is obviously at the start of a match there's a coin toss to see which team is blue and which team is red. And it's kind of if you win the coin toss, you get to choose which one you want to be. And just to see how many people that won the coin toss actually picked blue rather than red.
I think I won the coin toss once, picked blue, and lost once, and had to fly red, so I guess most people picked blue.
I know at least one person didn't, because I lost both coin tosses and got to fly blue the first time, so...
has Blue Team, since the pick ban phase is more in their favor from your guys' perspective, have they actually been winning more as well, or has that been kind of split 50-50?
I think Blue has actually been winning more, but we should ask the stats guy for that.
Yeah, have you got anything on that, Aleksi?
Sorry, I was slightly zoned out there.
I was just saying, do you have stats on whether the blue, like, whether they picked as blue has won more than whatever has been picked as red?
In terms of, have ships been winning more on the blue side or teams in general?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like whether they went shield or armor kind of thing. I assume blue has won more than red, right?
Blue has always won more than red. Interestingly, shield has only properly started winning since it's been being played on the blue side. But we saw the red team never take armor in the first week of the minor leagues, whereas it ended up taking 5 matches out of the 7 in the major leagues because it got forced out of it got forced onto it by blue taking shield and taking the wins.
Am I right in thinking there was a lot more Logi bans from blue than there was from red in the major league, at least? Anyway?
Yeah, I'm trying to find, because normally we have a lot of spreadsheets that we use when we run this. I'm trying to find the one that shows it all. But I can't find it.
Yeah, typically we saw far more bans going onto Logi from the blue side. You see the red bans, typically going onto battleships and often the armor battleships. Overall, it's still something like 60% of red side bans are armor battleships, which is slightly dreadful if you look at the win rate of the armor battleships at this point. But you see blue side actually banned a Logi in, I believe, all but one of the matches in the Major League last week, and put a double ban onto Logi in 5 of them.
And the thing is, if you ban Logi as red team, blue team can just ban the other 2 Logis and pick Logi, and then you end up going no Logi.
Indeed, it would be, unless of course you actually. No, you can't. You cannot force that. Force them to ban the 4th Logi. So there is no way to end up in a good position, or at least there's no way to get Logi if you start by banning Logi on red side and blue wants to get rid of it for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's all about playing the percentages sort of thing, as to giving yourself options further down the line. So obviously, if you don't ban Logi at all as red, then you know there's going to be something available because they've only got 2 bans before you pick a Logi. And obviously, as red, if you're going to ban a battleship, which is always nice to do, kind of thing, there's a lot more viable armor battleships than there are shield battleships, so you can kind of ban those, knowing that if you are forced to go down the armor route, you've still got ships available.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing for the stats guys or the commentators, the battleships that get banned aren't necessarily the best battleships. They are just like you try to ban the 2nd best battleship and pick the best battleship. So your opponent ends up with the 3rd best battleship. So that's why we see Megathron and Abaddon ban so often, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I mean, for example, like if you ban the Abaddon, it's because if you do want to go armor like a range comp, then you know you still got a Mega available and you still potentially got a APOC available for it. So it's kind of you're not wasting a ban on something that's not useful at all. You know, you're not hurting yourself as such.
It's actually the APOC and the Abaddon that are seeing most of the bans. The Megathon's only been banned once so far.
Yeah, and both the APOC and Abaddon are like nice bans if you don't know what you're going to fly yet, because both those ships have amazing projection and just hit everything on the whole field. So those are always a secure ban.
One thing that I am now regretting not having picked up on earlier, but compared to the minor leagues where we saw far more no Logi picks, we saw far more picks of attack battle cruisers, in the major leagues we were always seeing a Logi pick and a Lynx pick coming out. There was previously talk in the Cup of it being sort of a fairly major decision between did you pick links, did you pick the pure DPS options of the attack battle cruisers. I'd be curious to ask, what's it that's potentially swinging it so far in favour of links at this point?
I mean, from my point of view, links are almost always going to be better than no links. I mean, I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that as such. I mean, there's very few of the attack battle cruisers that are worth picking anyway, from my point of view. And to pick one of those over taking something that's got a useful link for you is a really hard choice, I think. So unless you really kind of set in your comp up to do one thing and one thing only really, really well, then it's really hard to go for that over a link that gives you a bit of extra versatility. Especially given that the link changes now, you've got the different charges that you can use. So you've kind of got a few different options for each one, whether it's an info link or a shield link or a skirmish link, etc. You know.
Yeah, it's just a shame that Armor doesn't really have the option of a skirmish link besides the Brutix.
Yeah, I think we all saw how well the Brutix worked for me last weekend.
Yeah, true.
So when you guys are thinking about comps to pick and all that kind of stuff, did you, because as we mentioned before, Aleksi said that there was a lot more Logi picks in this weekend than the minor leagues. So did you guys actually feed off of the minor league picks and then adjust your own game to that, or were you already set in stone that Logi would be better for the major league matches?
So I did watch the minor league matches, but I was pretty sure beforehand that I was always going to pick Logi if it's available, or at least mostly, because the alternative is going Caracal and then kind of a Kingslayer-like comp and try to blast the enemy Logi before they do anything, which worked quite well in the minor league sometimes. And when we were in the minor league last season, we actually won 2 matches like that, but it's still a very risky pick.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important to say here that I think people approach building comps differently and stuff, and everyone kind of looks at the ship list and kind of thinks, this is viable, this is not viable, this is viable, this is not viable type thing, and then builds the comps based on the ships that they think are useful. And you can only do it from your point of view. Obviously, it's really hard to kind of look at it from a totally different thing, you know, and sort of predict what other people are going to do until you actually practice with people and you kind of watch a major league weekend or a minor league weekend. And I think that, I mean, how I looked at it anyway, a lot of the minor league stuff, I was kind of looking at the matches and kind of going, I wouldn't have picked that. I'd have picked this instead in the ban phase, for instance. And then, like, even during the matches, I was kind of like, oh, I'd have done this at that point rather than that kind of thing. So when I'm looking at those matches, I look at it from a fan point of view because I enjoy watching them anyway. But a lot of them, I kind of look at them and think, well, I'm almost never going to put myself in that situation, so it doesn't really help me a great deal to see what happens with that, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's good sometimes where if you miss things entirely, you can pick up stuff like that if you see something perform really well that you didn't expect. But from a general thing, I think it's really hard to kind of watch that and have that then change your opinion about things. So, I mean, do you guys kind of agree with that, or does that sound like I'm just talking a lot of twaddle?
No, I completely agree. I watch those matches and, like, sometimes you think, what the hell are they doing? And then they win, and then you have to think, yeah, okay, what did the enemy do to make them win? But it's really hard to make it swing your own opinion of stuff.
From my perspective, as a player rather than the captain, it's quite a lot different because I tried to understand the meta and I tried to understand what might be happening or the strengths of the different comps or what's possible to be fielded against me. But as a mostly Logi pilot that just goes out there and does that, I tend to phase out quite a lot of the ban stuff and actually just focus on getting in my ship and going and just doing the best job I can in that. So for me, like personally, I personally just absolve myself from the meta and just accept that there's probably people out there and in my team that are better at picking that kind of stuff. And then I just go out there and fly the best I can with whatever I'm given. It's really one of those tournaments where you can really start to see, because of the set fits and everything that goes along with that, you really do start seeing piloting skill come into it a lot more. And I think if you can see, one of the things that I noticed on both weekends so far is that some of the piloting is exceptional in this tournament. Like there is so many good people that are out here flying the ships, and so many experienced pilots from TQ coming and trying to compete. I think it's insane the level of quality that's in this competition.
I think being a commentator and generally just an observer, I'm kind of in the same boat. Because like it's always fun listening to everyone talk about the pick and ban phase and who they think they'll win or who has the better comp or this or that. And we just sit on like on comms and just kind of theory craft it before the match starts. And the match starts and usually things like go drastically different than what we ever thought would happen, and people end up being wrong, or they end up like kind of eating their words of saying, oh, this comp clearly will win, because either people make mistakes while piloting or they pull off, like pilots pull off a move that, we as commentators sitting on the outside wouldn't really expect. And I think that's actually super interesting to see, is how, you can always go in and say, oh, well, this is how it looks on paper, but it obviously is different out in the field.
Yeah, I mean, as a captain personally, there's nothing more satisfying than watching the stream back and seeing like stuff in the chat channel, and people are like, "Oh, Team John is definitely going to lose," blah blah blah, and then just destroying the team, just
That's
totally
always
doing
fun.
something we've not expected.
I like doing that, but for a different reason. Rain always gives me a motivational speech every time a match begins with power ducks in it.
Yeah, smack talking is usually like the best motivator
Yeah.
too. Like I know some of these teams, I'm thinking like Make 'em Mar Great Again always has Gorski Carr with him, and Gorski generally just doesn't fly. He just sits in Twitch chat and just smack talks everyone, which looks really great when like they lose or something, because then he looks foolish. But it's still really fun to see.
It's an important role in a team, smack talking.
Yeah, Hoodie's definitely got it down with Callum. He can talk for the best of them, really. Well, in most cases, for the next 5 best combined as well.
So, do you guys think you have the meta figured out? And by the meta, I mean kind of generally what works in this format and what doesn't work, especially since the fits have changed. I think the rules ever so slightly changed, but do you guys think you have it all figured out, or are you guys feeling like some people, or maybe yourselves, are kind of lacking it or lagging behind?
If nobody else wants to take that one, I'll go first.
Yeah, y'all suddenly don't want to talk.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it and I kind of think, yeah, I've got this angle covered, I've got that angle covered, and kind of know what I'm going to do against this and that type of thing. And then you get to the next day and you look at it again and you kind of like, well, actually, I think I'll do that against that. And it's constantly, I'm changing your mind about things and stuff like that. And I constantly seem to go from, I want to use this because it can do okay against all of these, and then other times I'm like, I'm going to use this because it'll destroy that, but it's terrible against everything else and things like that. So the more time you spend looking at it, the more options you can come up with, and the more you can just constantly change your mind, sort of thing. And I think it's kind of, the more practicing you do, the more you just refine that to like these are what I want to get. But then obviously with bans, you kind of have to account for, I can't have that, so what am I going to do it in? If I can't get that particular ship, what am I going to replace it with? And if that does that then make this entire comp not work anymore, and that type of thing. So there's so many different options and so many different things that you can spend as much time as you want on it. But it's kind of after a certain point. Well, I personally at least feel after a certain point you don't really gain a whole lot, because you just kind of, looking at different options for the sake of looking at different options.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So it's pretty much the same for us.
Can I ask a question? No, for the captains mostly. So how often during practice or even during the competition itself did you just during the big ban phase that you just went crazy and went, screw it, we're not gonna do this, we're gonna go for something absolutely completely different. It's probably not going to work, and it ends up working anyway. Because that's probably more common to happen during practice than it is during matches, because you probably don't want to experiment during matches. You probably want to go for things that you know and are more comfortable with. but like how often during just training did you go and pick or mostly pick actually, not even ban ships where or fits where you would just go like, this is probably gonna fail miserably, but let's give it a shot anyway.
I mean, at the beginning, you do that very often because you don't have any idea of how a ship performs in practice. But towards the end, there's only very specific things I actually test, like new things. And you maybe change the battle cruiser in a comp you like, or you change the frigate, like you go Slasher instead of Merlin, stuff like that. But in matches, I never do that because it's just too risky. It could work, but it couldn't. And yeah, I'm not going to risk that. But in the practices, yeah, as I said in the beginning, very often. Towards the end, not that often anymore.
I'm somewhat similar, I think. I mean, I'm looking at like 2 or 3 guys that kind of do theory crafting with me on my team, and there's definitely occasions in practice where they like convince me to try something which I'm like 100% convinced is going to fail horribly, and most of the time it does, but occasionally it works out really well. But I mean, in terms of like in practice and in matches, I think what you said about not taking risks in matches is definitely what most teams will do as well. Yeah, happy to do it in practice to see what things are, but when it comes down to actually doing the picks, I always say to my team, like, if we're doing banning in practice, then yeah, give me all the input you want, but when we actually come to do it in a match, just don't say anything, let me do it, and then complain later if I screwed it up, sort of thing. Which has happened occasionally, I'm not going to lie, but generally it seems to work out okay.
I was going to ask, as a captain, how much do you feel an obligation to your team, or that you may have not done them justice, or potentially done down, or done really well by them, depending on how you come out of these pick ban phases?
Well, there was this one time last season where I picked Armageddon, even though I had the virtual already selected. So it was an illegal pick. Yeah, it was kind of stupid. We were lucky that it worked out in the end, but yeah, stuff like that happens. And yeah, you hate yourself for it, but can't really do anything afterwards.
I mean, from my point of view, just on that one, from my point of view personally, I kind of feel a massive pressure to like not screw it up for my team when I'm doing the bans, if you know what I mean.
Does your team give you a hard
The thing
time?
that kind of disappoints me personally watching these things, it's that because there is a discrete like set of options and you can pick out, and eventually everything's just gonna filter through to a game of rock paper scissors to some extent, you know, because you always have a set answer to every ban or a set pick for every ban. It's like as a reaction. It's kind of sad. Like I would really like for some team to just come out there, make a really retarded comp, and win. That would be amazing. I would love to see that, but it as you said, like nobody wants to really risk it at that point.
And I mean, the winning part is also very hard if you do a completely random comp.
It's funny you should mention like the really retarded comp sort of thing, because one of the things that we're kind of saying in practice, that if you kind of approach the bans and stuff, and the picks is in, I'm simply going to ban response to what you've banned and try and make things as bad for you as possibly I can, based on what you've banned and what I'm doing and what you picked and what I'm going to pick in response, things like that. You end up with some ridiculous teams against other like ridiculous teams, and it's hilarious to play. You just can't predict anything at that point, and it just comes out. It's hilarious to watch as well, I imagine, but I very much doubt you'd ever see that in a match. But yeah, it definitely comes out with some weird stuff.
Yeah, I can completely agree. In practice, we had often like banning all the good battleships, like from both sides, and then you ended up with Dominic's versus Maelstrom and stuff like that. So, like 2 battleship picks that you'd never fly in a real match, in the comps and versus each other. So in the live matches, it's all a little more passive, and the banning isn't as aggressive. At least it wasn't when I watched the matches. Maybe that's also why the minor league has so many no logic comps, or the meta is still a little bit different.
They didn't have that many. They had, I believe, 3 true no logic comps. One of them, something I've been discussing with Bay, but one of the no logic comps as it gets classified was, in fact, the Sudden Otter's Burst based composition, though I'm not sure how much you can say you've based your composition on the Logi frigate, or even to what degree they actually did base their composition on the Logi frigate.
How does that count as a no logi comp though? Because I'm pretty sure that Burst was like pretty pro in like both his piloting as well as keeping the Rogue alive.
That's something you would have to discuss with Bay, because it was his call on the classification with that, and I ended up just running with it. So
I think it's
tried
just
to put a footnote in.
I think it's just that you can't really call it a true Logi because it doesn't rep anywhere near the same as a normal Logi, and it's like you kill it in a totally different way than you would normal Logi and things like that.
Okay.
So it's just kind of, let's have 2 categories rather than 3 to make the graphs a little bit less complicated.
Yeah. Well, if they become more popular, I think I will be working around a Logi frigate and a Logi cruiser category, because those teams will be playing very differently.
Do you think more people will start using the Logi frigate? I know before the show started, you guys had mentioned some people have practiced with it. Do you think we're going to see some tomorrow and maybe even next week with the major leagues?
I honestly doubt it. They have the advantage of surprise because you don't expect them in the banning process, but if they get picked once and people like think about them, they are just so easy to counter and just to kill.
I think I'd kind of agree with that really. I think one of the important things as well is that there's so few like good cruiser options. Even if you include Logis, there's 4 armor four cruiser Logis obviously, and then you'd be lucky if there's maybe 2 more that you want to use. So it's kind of, if I do have to go with a Logi frigate, what am I going to use in the cruiser slot? And because there's so few options, it's kind of easy to eliminate things like that.
I was going to say the pick band seemed to answer that with the Caracal. Every single team that has not picked a logistics cruiser has picked it. It has picked a Caracal over the logistics cruiser.
Yeah, that's because the Caracal is incredibly powerful, and not a single other cruiser comes close to it. And if you go no Logi, you kind of have to make the decision to kill the enemy Logi, or at least to overwhelm the reps of the enemy Logi. And the Caracal has just insane burst DPS, and with, for example, the Ferox or the Naga, you can deal a lot of damage at range and either kill the enemy Logi or just overcome the reps. So the Caracal is really the only no Logi cruiser that's a valid pick in my opinion.
Even to some of the E-War cruisers, say, I'm thinking like the Blackbird is the first one that comes to mind. Are those
I guess the Blackbird can work, but then it's racial specific gemmas, and you can kind of counter that, and you can, it's a Blackbird without Logi then, and you can just kill it.
Okay.
I think the Bellicose is OP and everybody tomorrow should ban it. I have no ulterior motives here.
But I would love to see just no Logi all out Mimitar artillery team win. I'll even go so far as to say if somebody brings as much artillery as you can possibly get and they win a match with that, I'll give them a skin from last season because it would just be awesome to see.
One skin for the whole team or one each?
Well, in theory, I've got enough to give them one each, so I could do one each if they do it and pull it off. Yeah.
Yeah, surely, or is it going to go to whoever gets the final blow on the first thing they alpha?
If a team brings, well, let's see, there's only artillery for cruiser, battlecruiser, and battleship. I could name them all, but I don't think I need to really. If somebody brings a team with those and wins with it, I'll give a skin to each of the artillery flying pilots. So there you go.
If you can name them all, you're ahead of some of our commentators, it seems.
That's the Rapture, the Hurricane, and the Maelstrom.
Yep.
Actually, in terms of were people together on their fittings, particular pick from last week I have to question, and that was Volta picking the Dominics into a armor comp. And
Yeah. I'd love to try to explain that, but I just can't. I have no idea what they did there.
It might well have come down to bans, to be honest, as to what they thought they had available still. I know it would be useful for them. Plus, if they kind of base their comp on needing newts, then you don't have a whole lot of options if a Geddon gets banned, for instance.
the Geddon, however, was actually up. The Geddon was up that match, as was the Apocalypse was down, but there were strong options on armor. And what has to cross my mind is the fact that until 2 weeks ago, the Dominics was still an armor pick. And was it as simple as that?
I wouldn't want to speculate on whether Starfleet went along those lines or not, but hey, who knows?
So that was... Which match was that? I think Volt only played
That was
once.
the Volta against the other team match, which was lost with that Dominics dying quite quickly.
So the match that I have, because I have the picks and bans, but they don't have a Dominix. Oh, this is I think where the battle cruisers got mixed up. So if I can link it to you guys, and then I will post it on Twitch chat.
One thing I would say that banning against Hoodie is a horrible, horrible experience. Can unsettle just about anybody when he's doing that.
Yeah. And I think this one was where both battle cruisers on this sheet were wrong. So obviously you have, what was it, the Dommy for the Harbinger? I think this is, I don't know, I think the Ferox was wrong as well. I know they had something shield. Or not something shield, I think it was something Mimitar.
I just checked the YouTube thing, one second.
Yeah, I would pull it up to show on stream, but I don't want to pull it up if it's wrong.
You can tell we're incredibly prepared for this, can't you?
No, that did, looking at the VOD, it was the Dominics. And aside from the fact, the Maelstrom in that pick ban, it seems to be on point for what I have on record.
Okay, so was it the battleships were wrong then? I don't remember. I honestly
Yeah,
remember.
it was
Okay.
that Maelstrom should be a Dominics on that pick ban sheet, apparently.
And then was the Rogue still accurate then, or 'cause I want to say that.
The Rogue was a Typhoon.
Okay, yeah, that sounds a lot better. Oh yeah, okay, I remember because I had Keelan in the Typhoon, right?
Indeed.
All right, I remember this match. But yeah, so that's when the other team did win that. All right.
I suspect you may not have remembered that match if it wasn't for a certain skin.
That's why I remember it. But our sheets. I remember talking about this, and we're like, oh yeah, these sheets are wrong or whatever, and so we had to like try and explain it. And then what's worse is like as a commentator on these sheets is different than what you have in the game. So usually red and blue flip. So I always have to keep the sheet open and then match the ships to make sure I have the team names correct. Because on the stream the team names are right. But on screen, I just get Team A and Team B, so you have to try and remember their names on the fly while commentating, and I find it to be like super difficult to juggle, and it just creates confusion for me.
Actually, the most fundamentally annoying thing is how many teams don't have a relevant ticker to what their team name is, or they'll have a relevant ticker to what their alliance is on Tranquility. And I think across the cup, particularly, you would have heard teams, commentators calling out it was Vidra against Half-Left or whatever, because that's what we were seeing with the tickers on screen and checking people's actual corpses. It's time that you don't have when you're commentating. On the other hand, there are some which are quite interesting. We've got, of course, I think I referred to them by it the other week. We have the Quack team featuring Loca himself, and we have Clever Girls running under the ticker of PL Sucks.
Always nice to see. I was going to say you guys must love mine, but mine's nice and boring. It's just I just made all my guys join Team Johnny Corporation, and with the ticker Johnny. Nice and simple, no issues whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's super helpful.
On behalf of the commentary team, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of teams get angry when you call them, especially I think Tuskers has a couple different teams. So when you say, oh, the Tuskers team, Like, obviously, the people who aren't on that team in particular are like, hey, we're Tuskers too on Tranquility. But this is Thunderdome. You try to keep it separate than, like, alliance names or whatever. But then it just gets confusing.
You've no idea how one sentence can be massively motivating when people say things like Tuskers B team.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to avoid that. So, what are you guys looking forward to tomorrow then? I know, Loca, you're flying. And then, I believe...
Yes.
You looking forward to any particular match tomorrow?
I'm looking forward to hopefully getting more than 0 points by the end. That is currently the biggest motivator for tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to the match against Make 'Em Our Great Again, because if you remember a couple of weeks ago on the Tournament Talk Show, we were talking about potential rivalries between teams that carry over from Tranquility or from previous events, and Make 'Em Our Great Again beat us in the Tyrian Trophy. This was a few months ago now. This will be the first time we've played them since then, so we'd really like to win that one. And I think it's going to be really fun because Make 'Em Out Great Again, their style, where they charge in at teams, it's always going to be a fun match against them. You don't see too many 10-minute Make 'Em Out Great Again matches.
I think we don't see too many 10-minute matches, actually. Is that surprising?
But-
We've only seen one match go to time so far in the championship.
I think
Yeah.
that actually ties into one thing I was going to mention as well about how many like domination victories we've actually seen last week, at least anyway. And whether you think that trend will sort of continue this week?
So I think for
I'm
I'd say minor league, I know had maybe 2, and then last week we saw like 2 right off the bat, and I think a total of 3 for the whole day, which is actually pretty surprising.
So I can maybe tell you something about the match that went to time. That was us versus, I think, Team Pretty. And this match went into time because we kind of tackled the Rock and the Hyperion. So we were in the Rock, Team Pretty in the Hyperion. And our slasher tackled the Hyperion on the other side of the arena. And then I was in the Rock, and I got tackled by the Rifter. And pretty much the whole Battleship DPS was out of the game. And that's why nothing died until the end.
Yeah, I think you guys were struggling trying to kill those frigates off of you or whatever, and then so that's when you guys both had Logi as well, and they were just kind of like kiting out and keeping you alive.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you cannot scram a slasher, so it's all really hard to kill if it tackles your battleship. And even the Rifter, like if you're in a Rock and you try to hit a Rifter, it's just not possible if you don't have any support left. Which can wipe it down. And the Grappler helps a little bit, but it doesn't help that much. But apart from that, I think just with the Battleship DPS field, usually stuff dies very quickly, and it doesn't go to time because there's this one moment in the matches where usually things start to snowball, and then one team just gets completely wiped out.
typically when the Logi dies.
Yeah, not necessarily. Because
Well, yeah. I think the point about Battleship DPS kind of decided matches is quite relevant, really, because it's really about where you apply it and what you can apply it to, things like that. I mean, there seems to be like a general perception that if you've got a Logi on the field, you can basically tank whatever the other team throws at you. But that's not the case a lot of the time. It's really about how you pilot the ships that are taking fire and whether you're using Logi drones and things like that as to whether you can keep them alive or not. There's definitely potential for most teams to have enough damage to break Logi reps in the right circumstances.
Yeah, and if you look at the stats, the Logi, even the Osprey, can only rep so much. I think 700, 800 with links and heat, maybe 850 versus resist bonus ships. But that's all you can rep. And if you have your battlecruiser with 500 DPS and your battleship with 800 DPS shooting one target, it's going to die.
I think that's been brought up multiple times of Logi's not really there to keep your ships alive, it's just there to prolong their dying. And so obviously if your ships die slower than the enemies, then you obviously win.
Yeah, and it kind of gives the chance for your enemy, like gives them the chance to make a mistake. like switching targets at the wrong moment, or shooting Logi drones, or just switching to the Logi because they see they cannot break it, but they just cannot break it because like they are not applying their DPS correctly or stuff like that. And then you make a mistake.
Sorry.
And yeah, I think that's what Logi is for, to prolong the match and like give your opponent a chance to make a mistake and like keep yourself from making one. And that's another point I kind of want to say, because I've heard a lot of people talking about how important the banning is and the piloting itself, but another key point in my opinion, which kind of belongs to the piloting, is that making mistakes is so huge in this setup. Like one single mistake can easily cost you the match. While, for example, versus the AT, you have 10 pilots. If like your frigate makes a mistake, it's not crucial. It's bad, but it doesn't cost you necessarily the match. But here, if your slasher fails to tackle the enemy battleship or stuff like that, your team completely loses. Or just one set of burnout guns and stuff like that.
Well,
Yes, we've seen. Yes, well, I was actually going to avoid that and instead name check losing both of your command ships to a boundary violation and still being able to pull the match back. Which is something we've seen happen in the AT, but here almost every boundary violation we've seen, bar a couple of frigates or destroyers, has been catastrophic for the team that's done it, and mistakes like that have been incredibly painful to watch. We've seen, of course, that micro jump drive play, and back in the cup we saw a couple of things like the logistics cruisers boundary violating was game ending.
It's like everyone thinks it's very easy to stay in a match, to not boundary violate, but a lot of people get really tunneled vision with all the pressure. It's very difficult to like. A lot of people, especially like beacons on your overview, a lot of people don't really expect that. But that's how you can tell if you're inside the arena or not.
Well, hopefully it's how you can tell how far out you are. It's easy to tell if you're inside the arena or not by whether or not you're in a pod.
Yeah, you can tell how far away you are in the arena or how much distance you can travel.
Yeah, the problem is you have to actually look at that at the range, and yeah, don't forget about it and just boundary without actually knowing that you're about to boundary.
I'll admit, I played in the Eventi. I want to say LAN tournament. I know it wasn't, but it was the closest thing Eve gets to this. And previously, I thought how ridiculous people must have been to be boundary violating, and then I did it myself just because I was focusing on the ship that was coming after me and making sure I kept my cells on it, kept my range on it, and then I suddenly clocked 124 on the beacon, and it was over.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth mentioning that. I mean, obviously it's 125 kilometers beacon, well, arena, and if you come in at range, if you warp in at range, you're going to be 50 away from the beacon to start off with. So a lot of ships, you're talking like 40 seconds, 50 seconds sort of thing, and you're out the arena if you burn straight away. So it's very easy to do if you're not really paying attention to where you are, and if you're concentrating on something other than your range to the arena, you know.
Yeah, especially with battleships like the Typhoon or the Abaddon, I guess, and Mega, where you try to stay as far away as possible from the enemy, and those things turn like a brick. So if you notice, oh, you're 115 away or 120, it might even be too late.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say if I'm flying a battleship that's got a micro jump drive on it, then if I'm even thinking about using it, I'm generally like clicking approach on the center of the arena before I even get anywhere near pushing that button, just to make sure that I'm not going to jump out.
I was going to say, I believe there is a Mr. Heater who would like to have discussions about how you manage that. But to segue into actually a question that's been on my mind for a lot of the week, how much, with piloting skill, how much do you feel specific pilots are skilled in flying a specific ship, or do you feel sort of most of the pilots in your team are comfortable in almost anything they have to bring? It's just a similar set of skills across it all.
So for us, we have, of course, a dedicated Logi pilot who actually was flying tackle and destroyer stuff in the last season and in the AT. So we trained them up really fresh. And then we have like the battle cruiser pilots, but for the smaller stuff, the slasher and the slasher or Merlin or just tackle or destroyer, everybody can kind of fly those, but there are some who are specialized at flying them, and who usually fly tackle. So I'd say most of my people have one specific role, or maybe two.
Yeah, I think most teams work on a similar principle. I mean, in my case, we have two Logi pilots that I wouldn't say we alternate, but we kind of pick based on what we're flying. And then we have a group of pilots that are going to fly the battlecruiser or battleship, and then we have a group that are going to fly destroyers and frigates. And that's what we do in practice, and that's what we do in matches. We tend to not cross over unless it's kind of very early in practice, if you know what I mean.
That actually ties into the second thing about that I wanted to ask, which is within a given slot, how often do you feel, well, if I'm taking Hyperion, say, I'll bring in Pilot X, but if I'm taking something like a Typhoon, I'll bring in Pilot Y. Do you have pilots that feel they're that much more comfortable on a certain style of ship as well as the general sort of size and performance of it?
In our case, yeah. Basically, like, the best example I can give of it is myself doing Logi, and then in the practice yesterday I had it go in the Hyperion, very strong ship. Felt completely out of place in it, just completely out of my comfort zone. I think it's like, even within the ship-specific roles, as a Logi pilot in the cruiser slot, for example, if a Caracal or Moa or Blackbird or any of the alternatives, Mala, etc., that are out there get picked, it's not as smooth a transition for me as it might be for somebody else who's in a battle cruiser going to different ones. But then in each class there is their own variations. Like in the destroyers class, there's some that are more focused on tackle and there's some that are more focused on kiting away. In the frigate class, you've got typically very tackle-y ships, but the way that you do that in the match is very different between them. In the battle cruiser, you've got the attack battle cruisers and the Lynx ships, which are, one thing that people forget about as well these days is that Lynx have range, and you need to be paying attention and seeing if the people that you are boosting are actually in range of your boost. And then in the battleship classes, you've got ships that can MJD, and there's so many little different variances within the classes. Sometimes people feel quite comfortable transitioning between them, but there has been a lot of cases, and I can speak from experience in our own team as well, where specific ships within a category are better for specific people. But then we also understand that because of the way that we've practiced, usually it's people who have the most practice in those ships that then go and fly them. I don't know if that's the same for Jose or Battle, for the way you guys do things.
Yeah, it's very similar for us, to be honest. We kind of tend to distill kind of ship roles down to kind of brawl or like kite type thing. I mean, it's a very sort of general thing. And there's definitely people that we put in ships when we want to kite, and there's definitely people that we put in when we want to brawl. And there is crossover, but it's not a massive amount, I would have thought.
Yeah, same for us, more or less. But I also try to rotate people a little bit. So in one practice, have a frigate pilot fly a battlecruiser, for example, just to give them a sense of perspective. And yeah, we have a lot of new guys actually, like tournament newbies, I'd say. And yeah, I kind of start with them flying frigates, but also then have them fly a battlecruiser for once and stuff like that.
To be honest, I love it when we get new guys in, because it's almost like the way I do practices and stuff. I'm like, you need to be on this time and do this date and stuff like that. And I like, if I get somebody new, it always takes me a few weeks to get them to actually do it and be there. And the moment they actually come to their first proper practice and fly and stuff, they grumble about being told what to do all the time and stuff. And at the end of it, like, oh my god, this is awesome. And then they're like locked in for everything after that. At that point, it's great.
Yeah, it was actually different for me because we had quite a lot of people who were actually interested in flying in the tournament. and I kind of had to pick 15 afterwards, which was always a shame.
And I promise the final question on this subject, with bringing in new blood with stuff like that, do you ever end up feeling you have a specific strength of roster towards one kind of flying or another? And do you ever end up looking at your picks and bans and picking a composition because you know you have good pilots for it, more than necessarily just picking a composition because you think it's strong?
So my first priority is actually to have everybody on my team fly at least once. And apart from that, yeah, I think I'll just go through the groups, like the group who flies frigates and Desis, they just like rotate, and then you have the group who flies destroyers, they rotate. And if somebody cannot come to one match, he's going to like fly the next one and stuff. So I don't really have a fixed set of this person is going to fly this ship and this match.
I think for us, it's all about winning that match. You've got an opportunity in front of you, and the league is very harsh in the way that it's set up. You've got 4 promotion places and 4 relegation places in the minor league, and you know that you're going to be somewhere different by the end of this season. So it's very tough, and we go into every single match knowing, okay, we're just going to do whatever we can to win this match, and we're going to pick the best people that we feel is best for this match. So we don't actually adjust the comps as such, we just go for whatever comp we think is strongest, and then we'll look at the people that we have there and say, okay, who would be the best people in this comp, and then we go with that. And we're very fortunate in that while we do have a 15-man roster in a Paradox team, that there are people that would happily just turn out just for practices if it meant that we would do well in the tournament. And we can only be really thankful for that. And we do hope that everybody gets an opportunity to play. But the winning of the matches comes first. That's the ultimate priority for us. It sounds harsh, but it's when the competition is as fierce as it is, and when the players are as strong as they are, it's something that we feel is necessary, I guess.
I personally think Johnny was somewhere in between the two. Really, we kind of have certain people that are going to fly certain ships, but as a general rule, if you come to practices, you're going to fly in a match at some point because there's enough matches to do that. It's never been an issue really for me in the past. Certainly what I plan to do going forward anyway. One thing that is kind of interesting to bring up at this point is kind of how people kind of approach running a team and being a captain and stuff. Because I think there's definitely some people that kind of do it as like a not so much a democratic thing, but generally go with majority rules type thing. And then there's other people that kind of it's my way or the highway sort of thing. I think it's probably best to ask my team which way I come down on that one, but it'd be interesting to see what people's thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and like especially for the AT, I have the last word and stuff, but I always ask the other guys for advice or what they think. It's not so difficult for the NT here because yeah, you have to do the banning, and I mean, like you said earlier, Battle Dog, that's just stuff like the task of the team captain, and you just do that. But apart from that, there's not really that much theory crafting going on, and fitting, like you have pre-made fits, you don't need to think about fitting stuff.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And what's the sort of commentator's view on this, and from like looking at matches and stuff?
Unfortunately, I have to say it's not something that we. I can't necessarily speak for all the commentators, but it's not something that we necessarily perceive. We tend not to be following the individual pilots when watching. It's something I'm personally trying to do more, and I think we're being encouraged to do more. Is try and recognise which are the pilots making the plays, but a lot of the time it's just the slasher for the red team. It's the Ferox for the blue team that we're seeing, and we're focusing on the plays that are being made, and the names admittedly fall to one side as we just see the teams in general.
Yeah, I can understand it being quite tricky for you guys. It's quite interesting to listen to commentary sometimes, actually, when people are like, "Oh, this team's doing really well. They're focusing fire really well on this one ship and stuff." And then other times where like fire's split on things, it's just kind of automatically assumed that it's a bad thing rather than looking at the actual situation and why they're doing that sort of thing in some cases. But I suppose it's hard for you guys to tell, really, because you can only really look at what you've been given to look at rather than everything you want to see, I guess.
It's even harder showing it.
I'm the one thing that disappoints me. All the VODs absolutely brilliant, aside from one thing. At no point did you see what range that Hyperion made it out of the arena to. No one expected the micro jump drive. None of our streamers managed to catch at any point. The camera never turned round.
I
enough.
mean, I had my camera set up on it because he was starting to micro jump. I mean, sorry, not me, goddammit, Bio, because I was watching that, and he actually had the camera set up on the hype, and it was like micro jump driving. And he just left the camera on the hype because obviously it's confusing. I mean, it's okay for the hype to turn on the micro jump drive, but why would he do it facing outwards? That doesn't make sense. And yeah. The thing is that usually when you do the camera work, when someone blows up, you know, it takes the focus of the camera away immediately. So you couldn't see exactly how far out of the arena he went.
And I think it shows, I mean, at best you could see the capsule there from obviously when he died, but I don't think they have capsules on overview. Or, I mean, obviously we as commentators have our overview up, but for the cameraman, you can't really see it. So unless the commentators call it out, which if they didn't catch it in the first place, you have the overview on the stream.
Yeah, I have pods on the overview as well, so you can see the pod, but like I would never really focus the camera on the pod of the pilot that just jumped right out of the arena deliberately, because obviously that thing just happened. It's not interesting anymore. When you see something like that happening immediately when he jumped, for example, that's still interesting to watch. But as soon as it happened, there's already other things happening inside the arena that I would like to capture that is more important. So I either would start focusing on another ship, or I would bring up tactical overlay so that everyone can see the current positioning of all ships.
Yeah, and I know a lot of times with like as commentators, like the people who are actively commentating are obviously watching the match, but then everyone else is kind of watching, and they'll like send like TeamSpeak messages or like in-game messages or pokes or something like that and say like, oh my god, this is happening right now, I don't know if you can catch that or whatever. So like there's communication, but some stuff just like flies by, especially MJD out of the arena.
I think we got a very nice shot of the Scorpion when it jumped out, but that Hyperion play actually just happened completely off camera, because it took everyone by surprise. Because I rewatched the VOD so often trying to see a range on that at any point. But it's quite interesting being on the commentary team when you're not actually being the one commentating, because you're just, a lot of time we're just trying to watch for things and we're just trying to see what's going on. And I remember there was one specific instance during the Cup where I ended up sort of shouting in the little channel we have for the commentators, the Merlins just looped round. And got completely missed by the commentators until we saw the tackle go down on the Osprey, because of course they were focusing on everything else that was going on, and then the Osprey died in about 3 seconds, and it was all because of this huge play by the Merlin. Actually, it must have been a Rifter now that I remember, but circling all the way around, and it's really hard to keep track of everything that's going on in the arena. Because you've got 10 ships that you're often watching for the specific effects on, or the specific effects between each of them. And they're in completely different places, and the effects aren't necessarily big enough for you to be seeing all of them if you're looking at a broad overview of the arena. So you end up trying to focus on one thing, and you focus on, say, the battleship brawl, or whether Prophecy has tackle on the rogue, and you don't necessarily notice one ship circling around the outside or another getting close to the arena edge. We try and help each other out, but even so, everyone else is still watching something specific in a very, very big and very complicated arena.
Yeah, a lot of times we get information afterwards. Like I think one match I commentated was really slow, and that was because they were shooting drones. But I as a commentator wasn't really watching each and every individual drone die. I noticed they had a lot of drones, and by the end they were gone. But I wasn't gonna spend like 30 seconds explaining that to the crowd. I would rather talk about the ship's piloting or something like that. So there are a lot of things that end up getting missed, which I mean kind of sucks to the viewers, or like sucks like when you miss it. But at the same time, there's like Eve is such a complex game. It's not just oh they're shooting person A and now they're shooting person B. There's like a lot of stuff that goes on, especially with some of these pilots and some of the elite maneuvers they do.
Yeah, there's obviously plenty of things happening at the same time as well, and there's like a finite number that you can actually mention in a set amount of time, I guess. So it's kind of understandable, really.
I mean, that's actually the reason why we have so many like spectators in the arena at the same time, because one person's gonna notice a thing the others won't, and vice versa. And even for like camera work, it gets kind of like it gets hard if there's some like really sudden changes, because finding the ship that is interesting to look at that exact moment, and going look at that ship and move the camera so it actually looks decent. That's I mean, it's kind of lightning reactions kind of thing to do, but it gets kind of frustrating, and that's one of the reasons I usually like to have the tactical overlay set up, so that like it's useful for teams and team captains for later, if they're watching the videos, so they can see the tactical overview, they can know where the ships were, what they were doing, what the opponent was doing good, what they were doing wrong, and vice versa. But at the same time, having close-ups of ships and explosions for the viewers to be enjoyable. Because if it was just the PvP nerds watching, they would obviously want to have just the tactical overlay and that's it. But for the normal viewers, it's obviously more interesting to have close-ups of ships and explosions. And getting that balance at the same time is also very challenging.
Yeah, I think it would be a great thing if we could actually get like views from individual players like on the stream sometimes. But then a lot of the time, I think all you'd be looking at is like a max zoomed out view, so it's not really that interesting to see. Because as a player anyway, and as a captain as well, you're looking to see where everything is in relation to everything else, and then what you're actually doing with your own ship and things like that. So it's not actually looking at pretty explosions and nice skins and things like that, if you know what I mean. You just don't get to see any of that stuff at all when you're trying to do a match, which is a bit of a shame, really, because it would be great to be able to see that normally. But
if you had the chance to have the views of competitors and switch between them, it would pretty much be the same as what we do by switching between tactical overview and the like looking at ships. I think it wouldn't be that much different.
I don't know. They did it for the Amar Championship at FanFest last year, and I thought it looked pretty cool. But then people were like super critical of every pilot. They're like, oh, they're clicking their modules. Why aren't they running their tank? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? So like, it sometimes can create more confusion or criticality of some of the pilots. But at the same time, I think it looks really cool, especially when like you get to see pilots managing their heat, managing their mods. Seeing how they have like their overlays and everything set up and their watch list, etc.
Yeah, it is awesome sometimes to be able to see just what they're doing with their modules rather than anything else at all. Especially for some Logi pilots as well, because like some of the stuff they do is just ridiculously good in comparison to like a lot of things where it's just literally a case of, okay, I'm going to go and tackle this and then not die essentially at that point. But when people have got to like manage multiple active mods and stuff, it can definitely be really interesting to watch and really not exciting as such, but just it's awesome to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one thing that also helps a little bit is if you have player-centered viewpoints, you actually see the ranges to the enemy and to the friendly ships, which kind of gets lost in this completely like detached overview when the commentators just sit in the center of the arena.
I think that has to be the thing that I would absolutely love to see, is just the ranges that you guys are operating at, because you have to eyeball it, and you try your best, but it's very hard to eyeball. Is that grappler going to be knocking 5% off his velocity or 40%, or that new sort of scraping capoeira and burning more capacitor on the Geddon that it's coming off of, or is it actually going to be digging into that ship?
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely explain some of the times where you'll see one match and one ship will be used and it'll do really well, and then you'll see another match and it'll look like the ship's being used the same way, but it does basically nothing useful the entire time. Simply because of things like that you can't show easily.
Exactly, and like trying to estimate ranges as a commentator or as a spectator, I mean, it's really hard, even if you fly in the match and you try to see how far away your teammate is, for example, and you try to warn him for if you're dead and just watching in a pod, and you try to warn him and you say, oh, be careful, you're almost boundary, and he says, no, I'm not, I'm 90 to the center. So it's incredibly hard to do that. So like, what I know there aren't any options to actually view those distances, but it would be really awesome.
Yeah, we've definitely had some interesting practices where we've kind of like been pointing out things like that to each other and stuff. And what somebody thinks is close to the edge of the arena is totally different to what somebody else does. So somebody will be like, oh, you're getting close to the edge of the arena, and they're like within 90 or something. And then somebody else is sat at like 112 or something and thinks they're totally safe. You know what I mean? It's definitely gets interesting sometimes anyway.
It's funny how a very simple sphere causes so much confusion.
At what point will we simply just highlight the boundary so people can finally know where it is?
Do you have it like around the citadels?
No,
Yeah, the
like,
problem is you're actually inside of this sphere, so all you see is boundary all around you.
it can be like
I think
say the new player experience bubble, where it's like 400 kilometers or something, and it's just this massive like glowing thing all around you.
We had this idea once to have basically get it past the competitors that it was okay to have a referee ship uncloaked in the middle of the arena, and then he would lock up all the competitors and on one client, and then use that to like screen grab little like the distances that they were from the referee, and then like put that all like next to the fancy UI of each player. Like I tried it kind of a little bit once, and it might work, but very kind of fiddly. And it also, like, I don't think people would like a ship decloaked in the arena, even if it isn't involved.
Does it have to be decloaked? Surely you could just scrape that from overview.
Oh, true, and we could do it with the yachts now. This was before we had the ships that could lock while cloaked as well. There is now a possibility with Thunderdome, so potentially we could do that.
Is it just me, or have you snuck in quietly there, Bei?
Yeah, sorry. I kind of yeah. Hi.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm Bei Artjay, working for the EventT team, and I've been helping EventT run and create tournaments before it's existed.
Yeah. So we were talking about the arena, and kind of like what commentators see versus what players see. I know we are a little bit over the hour, so if anybody has to leave, feel free to say something, say your byes or your shoutouts. But otherwise, we can continue talking if you guys still have stuff you want to talk about.
I'm sure we have plenty of questions for Bei.
I've only just come on, so I haven't missed anything you've you've said previously within the last 5 minutes. So.
Well, we've been readying the pitchforks to ask you about red versus blue picks.
Okay.
And,
well, I can talk about that. I presume you've discussed Aleksi's blog, which is a fantastic examination of the stats so far. And it kind of reassured me quite a lot, because predominantly I think what happened in the first 2 episodes of Minor and Major League is that there's a meta shift. Like last season and throughout the Cup, definitely the Cup, and mostly last season, there was by far the armor was always the strongest preference. And I think a lot of the teams were just kind of used to that and expected it. And I think for both episodes, but more predominantly in the Major League, there was a meta shift flip to Shield. So we saw a lot of teams banning out armor battleships for red, but kind of shooting themselves in the foot because they would ban out armor battleships, then blue would naturally go Shield because it's obviously a little bit stronger now. And then kind of like not ban out the Ferox, which is like super strong. So kind of like really set themselves up for failure in the picks and bans. Red team was. So I'm not too worried that blue is overwhelming advantage. There is an issue with frigate pick being first, meaning that so like the blue teams have started doing this thing where they ban one armor and one shield logistic, and then that means that the red team basically they can basically counter the frigate pick of the red team by like just waiting for the reds a shield frigate and then they go shield themselves, and then that means there's only an armor logistics available to red, and that doesn't match up very well with their frigates pick, which is a bit of a sneaky move. But hopefully I think we'll see this week and next week the major and minor league teams figure out ways around that, and I expect that red will be a kind of little bit more sneaky and a little bit more creative now with its picks and bans. Whether or not that will be good or bad, I don't know, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
So in summary, you don't think there's an issue between red and blue?
No.
Are we to take
I
this
think
the same way as the
definitely
words
said
which cars aren't
I've
overpowered?
admitted before, and I definitely think I definitely can't deny that being red, picking as red is definitely harder. You have to be more creative, and you have to be, because you don't get that comfortable, easy, guaranteed logistic pick. Then it is a lot harder, and you have to be a lot more creative. But last season, the first season, we saw red teams settle into those creative options, and it did start off a little bit in blue's favor, and then it kind of settled up that it kind of became pretty even once teams figured out the meta and stuff, which I expect to see happen this time. I'm fully prepared to be wrong. If at the end of the season it stays like kind of clearly a blue favor, then that's just the way it is. But I'm holding out hope. It'll be interesting. I think captains that dismiss red as a way to win, or be dismissed being able to win as red, are kind of like setting themselves up for failure. And I think the good teams, like top teams so far, Hoodie and Clever Girls, I think they've probably got really strong reds pick strategies. So I'm excited to see what they do when they get picked as red.
I know.
That contrary to what you've been saying already.
No, I was gonna say that they were asking because red versus who gets to be red and blue is picked on a coin toss, and they were curious to see what are the statistics for people who pick to be blue versus people who pick to be red. Do you have that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure no one picks to be red because it is harder. Definitely, it's like more comfortable as blue. There's less room for making mistakes, and you don't have to have a solid. You have to respond as red to blues. Blue sets up the meta with the logi pick, and then red has to respond. So giving up the control and choosing to be red, it probably will never make sense, to be honest. But that's fine. I think and it is unfortunate. Basically, the original idea was that we have everyone play twice, like a football league or whatever. We're kind of a home and away kind of thing, so everyone gets to play every other team's red and just blue, and that's kind of the ideal. But that means currently, with the number of teams we've got in the leagues, it's just not logistically possible at the moment for the amount of man-hours we've got from volunteers and stuff to pull that off. But hopefully in the future, that's the goal. But for now, there's an element of luck.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly be great to be able to play everybody twice, but like you say, it's the number of matches and how you organise that and things, really. So.
Yeah, I mean, we did consider lowering the number of teams. Like, if we lowered it to 4 teams per league, then that would certainly be easy to do everyone twice. Or maybe we could probably manage it with 5 or 6 at a push. But we decided, me and Nash, when we were kind of originally conceiving how we were going to pan out this year, it was like we felt it was really, really important to get as many teams involved as possible. Just because we want to kind of like spread the passion for esports to as many people in the player base as possible. So having 16 teams for us is much better than having 8 teams And if there's a little bit of sacrifices there to be made, and possibly in the fairness of the rules, then I think that's okay.
Yeah,
honestly,
it's certainly
I think
understandable.
I think red definitely can win. It just means you have to be more creative, and there is a little bit of element of luck in terms of which side you get placed and which you feel more comfortable with. We've seen like good teams win last week with red, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else, obviously, but in my case, in last week, this first match, well, we lost the toss both times, and in the first match, the team we played chose to be red, and we were blue, and we managed to get a domination win. And in the second match that we played, Hoodie won the toss and chose to be blue and got a domination victory. So
Yep.
all interesting. And we basically said as well, I think that everybody would choose to be blue if they had a choice generally.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, there just seems to be some really weird things. Like, I'm presuming that you knew what the strong meta was going to be in terms of like the Osprey Ferox thing. Maybe you didn't, but presuming that, like, why you didn't ban Osprey and Ferox as red? Like, I don't know. Like, the teams are just making some really strange decisions based on the meta at the moment. Maybe there's stuff I'm completely missing, and like there's stuff you have to be banning out as red that I'm completely missing. That's why they're not out the kind of like ships that are clearly quite strong. I mean, I'm just really interested and excited every week, like, to put the stats into the thing and go, ooh, look what they've done there. Ooh, why have they done that? I mean, Aleksi were kind of all nerding out about it this week, which is pretty cool.
I don't know how. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, from season 1, we knew the red team and blue team were pretty much 50-50, like they were dead even.
Yeah,
going into season 2, do you think it's the introduction of links, maybe? Like, has maybe links made Logi stronger, and because blue has the advantage pick over Logi, has that
maybe
why...
I'm being a bit dismissive. I honestly think that the flip is due to the people not getting their head around the fact that shield red is not necessarily before, like, blue was shield and red was armor, and people kind of like, well, sorry, the other way around, blue was armor and red was shield, but like people have not, the teams that have been winning as red have kind of like flipped that, have understood that going into the picks and bans, it seems to me, so they've kind of like had a plan for that, whereas the teams that are lost as red, not all of them, but a lot of them seem to have not quite realized that. Like, and like particularly like Bad, the team that chose to be red, like, that's curious to me. Like, obviously they know shield is strong, like, because they've been doing some practices. Maybe they thought they would just end up with shield because they picked red. Like, kind of like seems like a really silly decision to me. I can't remember who it was. Sorry if I'm offending anyone. But like, if you know shield is strong, then surely you still want to be blue and then pick shield, like, and ban out armor. But anyway, I don't know. It's interesting. It's really interesting to see what's playing out. I'm excited for this week. Like, I'm excited with like the Logi pick from Sudden Otters, Logi Freak pick, and that kind of thing. Like, just kind of like, okay, well, this is a problem now because they're kind of fairly balanced in terms of the meta. So let's try and think around this problem creatively, and let's definitely see more of that going on, which is cool.
To fulfill my role as stats nerd, 3 of the 4 victories that have been taken so far by Red Side have been as shield with Logi. And the only other victory Red Side has taken was a no Logi comp, in fact.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
The armor's not won a single match as red.
No, sorry, I tell a lie. Sense. It was 3 wins as shield and 1 win as armor, which you should know because that was Jose winning it with armor.
Wait, right, with the Hyperion.
Yeah, but that was a good match. You just charged straight into them. It was brilliant. I love watching that Hyperion just like snowball straight into the middle of them.
Yeah, I forgot to record that match. It's kind of annoying, but it was really fun to fly. But about the statistics, I think there's one thing that you should never forget is that it completely depends on the exact picks. Like, it doesn't really is red versus blue or armor versus shield, but it completely depends on what battleship you pick. For example, we saw the Dominic's pick in an armor comp, which was weird. And then I've said this before, the piloting mistakes are Like,
Oh, they're huge.
They're a huge factor, so they completely screw up those stats.
There are three kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics.
Yeah, no, we're looking at we're looking at two things so far, I think, in the statistics. One, we've got very low number of matches that we're kind of like observing, and like the meta is early days, and that kind of meta flip from armor to shield being predominant has definitely shifted. You can definitely see like mistakes being made in the picks and bans space because of that, definitely. So I'm surprised Red as many as many as they have, not people have been doing. So that'd be cool. I'm excited to see what happens this week. I think minor league's going to be super exciting because I think minor league teams, like someone was pointing out last week, are definitely a bit more creative and take more risks. So it'd be interesting to see what they do.
But the big question is, going into next week in the minor leagues, will we see them prioritizing shield more?
I think so, yeah.
The problem I have with shield is that, like, if you go for shields and your enemy knows you're going for shields, like if it's more or less your first ban or pick that gives it away, it's so easy to ban you out of good chips. Because I think most shield chips that have been winning were the Rock or the Tempest, and those two are incredibly strong. But the others are incredibly hard to fly. So with the Typhoon, you have to be good at kiting and like not get caught by a Hyperion. And Maelstrom, you have to like really pilot well to actually get hits off. And the Raven is just like a gamble. Either it works or it just dies.
Yeah, definitely.
And with armor, you have those solid battleships with Abaddon, Mega. Mega is interesting because it also works quite well, at least in practice it did for us. But it dies so quickly. But then you have the Geddon and you have the Hyperion, and those are just solid ships, and the APOC. And they're not hard to fly, and they are usually always good. But that also makes them easy to ban.
More battleships seem to me to be so forgiving in this format. Like they really are perfect. Just like based, their natural stats. I say natural, like without any kind of fitting modifications, they are just so good at this format because they kind of like the optimal ranges of their weapons are spot on. Pulse obviously are really good, pretty good tracking for battleship weapons, and then the beams have excellent range, and then obviously they have really solid armor tanks. Like even the APOC is, it's not the toughest battleship, but it's still pretty good. So it's just like the amount of battleships are just great, and I was kind of like trying to think of ways to like make them less good, and I think I already have by taking like tracking computers off the APOC and lowering the Abaddon's tank a little bit. But even that, they're still quite good, and like without making them kind of comedy fits, I think they're always going to be really, really strong. Cool. I love my battleships.
The next step has to be you swap the Geddon and the Dominics as to which is shield and which is armor.
Ooh.
I
Not
think
sure about that. Could you get away with a shield? I don't.
No.
I was actually really quite impressed with how the Dominic, like, given that like it was the only shield ship in an armor setup, I was still quite really impressed with how it did against that Osprey. Like it really hurt that Osprey, and like a couple of lucky hits about 20 or 30 seconds earlier in the match, and I think that could have gone a slightly different way that match. It was quite interesting to watch. Like it was definitely Starfleet, I think, took a gamble taking the Dominics, and it didn't pay off obviously, but I was quite impressed with how well it tanked armor logi.
Yeah, I would still never pick a Dominix in an actual match. Not even in a shield comp.
Is it that bad?
It's just it has two big issues, and one is that it has very little tank, even for a shield battleship, and it has a huge EM hole. So if you're up against an APOC or an Abaddon, they just like it halves your tank, and they're just going to punch right through it.
I could be wrong. I think it has like 100k HP. It's definitely not.
Yeah,
the
the real problem with it though is it's got like 50% resists at absolute best.
Yeah.
It's just, so you don't gain any logi reps.
Yeah, it's got AHP, but you can't rep it, so it doesn't have that permanence. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I did when I put it together. I did assume that it would be probably feature most in kind of red pick, no logi setups like that. Sentry Jones plus the Caracal, potentially quite a lot of kind of focused DPS right off the bat to try and kill things down with the nukes and shit. But we'll see. Hopefully it comes out again. I quite enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, and the other big problem of Dominic's is that it has incredibly shitty DPS. So like 570 with sentries, I think.
Well,
No, that's with
the Sentry
ogres.
DPS isn't a problem. The problem is that if you're going to face a brawling battleship with it, it just doesn't have anywhere near enough DPS to compete at all.
Yeah.
It has
if
the
you-
lowest DPS ceiling of anything but the Scorpion. Like quite a considerable margin aside from perhaps the Geddon. I think.
The Geddon has actually quite nice
The
DPS.
Geddon can hit like 800 odd relatively easily.
I believe the Geddon might be the one bug that remains in my sheet, and that's really annoying me because it's the one thing I've tried to mention tonight.
Have you not got any launches on it on your sheet for some reason?
I
Are you talking about stats wise rather than fitting?
I have them for a very simple reason. The when you copy and paste them out of the original fitting sheet, specifically the R blasts, it tends to drop the leading comrade so they don't get picked up by whatever fitting tool you put them into.
Yeah.
At which point,
I think we all know who to look at for that
launchers.
one.
Sorry.
I'm just saying, I think we all know who to look at for that particular issue.
And another
No
thing
comment.
another thing with the
Please
Dominic,
run away.
when it was armor fit, it actually had the two tracking links, like the omnidirectional tracking computer thingies. Now it has the low slots, which are okay too, but with the two mid slots, and you just tracking script and use heavies, and you could just waste any frigate that came close to you, and especially Logi cruisers too. And now that kind of got nerfed too. So I really think it's not a good ship and not in a good state right now.
Yeah, I mean, Bay, you're around in a minute, so yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back.
Do you have any changes that you've kind of penciled in already
I've
for
not-
like sort
I've
of
not-
future
I've-
seasons? Or?
I've not started thinking about it yet. Definitely people have been telling me things. I've been listening, definitely taking kind of mental notes, but no plans. It won't be, if we do a third season, it'll be sort of post-Alliance tournament. We're not sure exactly when that's going to be yet, so I would imagine it's going to be at least sort of October, November, so I've got plenty of time to change things around. And we can't take for sure now because like there's a good chance that some of the ships or modules or weapons will be rebalanced, which could entirely shift everything. So if they changed, like for example, rapid light missiles, and nerf them a lot, then that would mean that we'd have to have a serious look at whether or not we just get rid of all logistics together, because otherwise or completely change the banning system certainly. Because not having that Caracal pick, if you get banned out of all Logi, would put you at a serious disadvantage.
Yeah, I just want my light missile launcher Corax back.
We've seen the rocket Corax. I think
Once.
twice. No,
Twice.
I think,
100% win rate.
I think Clever
and
Girls
always-
picked it both times, and they win with it both as well. I think Hoodie bought it once, didn't he as well? I can't remember.
Yeah, so I think
It's always been Liquid Ninja piloting it so far.
I think the rocket Corax isn't actually bad. It's almost on the same level as the Thrasher, maybe even better because it can heat the invuln. But the light missile Corax is just so much better.
One thing we did mention earlier on as well, which is slightly away from what we just talked about there, was that there isn't really a whole lot of cruiser options if you're not going to go Logi, other than sort of, Caracals obviously been mentioned, and sort of maybe one or two others that aren't totally ridiculous. The rest of them, really, it's a struggle to find a reason to use it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not even going to blame Bay for that, because you fitted them as best as possible, I think. It's just they are so limited in this kind of setup.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it'd be really cool, like in some way, to like be able to change stats on certain ships, like to make them more viable. But then you'd lose anything either about it, so that would be a horrible idea. But like, some ships are just gonna never be able to in the arena. I don't think.
At what point do you start faction fitting your smaller ships to try and make them tankier?
Do you know, funny story actually? Who was it? I think it was Hoodie. Like, he was like, "But you've got to do something to make anything other than Logi relevant in cruiser slot." And they were thinking about ideas, and he got like, I think it was him or one of his courtmates fitted an Omen, like with all officer modules, like completely pimped it out, and I think he kind of used that as an example to say, would you pick that over Nagora? And the answer was still no.
Wow.
I'm surprised he wasn't arguing for a flagship stabber to be allowed.
I think artillery stabber, maybe? I don't know. Estamelins on maybe.
Yeah, the problem with cruises is, like, if you're kiting fit or long range fit, you kind of had shitty DPS. But if you're close range tackle fit, you just die.
Yeah.
See, if you'd put something like a rail thorax in there with a reasonable tank, I'd have been reasonably tempted to give it a go.
Yeah, but thorax actually, that's a good point actually. Like a shield rail thorax, I've used those on TQ before. They've been reasonably successful. That's actually not a bad idea. I'm going to put that in my back of my brain for next season. Because at the moment, yeah, like thorax is just like base plan, kind of a straightforward DPS kind of, which is fine. Which is like everyone loves that kind of ship, the sort of ship everyone flew back in the day, you know. But
if you want to go back in the day and if you're recording these things, laser thorax is an absolute I-win boat. Especially if you go rainbow lasers as well, which is the best thing ever.
I win in style, maybe, but maybe not in.
And about the other fittings, what I really liked was the addition of the afterburner things. But for some reason, the armor ones are still like lacking behind the shield ones, at least behind the slasher.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that is really. I kind of like. I need to go back and look at those again. I think we saw an Atron, did we, last week? 2 rounds well. Am I imagining
we did
that?
see an Atron picked, and I believe actually that it lost, if I remember. But that was unfortunately because it was. No, it won. I tell a complete lie. We saw an Atron, and it now has a 100% win rate.
Yay! There we go. But I think the slasher is super good because of that. And like that means that Shield have got 2 really strong tackle options with the slasher and the Merlin. So yeah, it needs to possibly like the Rifter and the Punisher are still pretty good. But obviously, yeah, one of those being Afterburner is a possibility. I think the Punisher is probably too slow to put an Afterburner on it.
The good thing about the slasher is that it goes 2k heated without links. So you're almost as fast as a Punisher. And you've got an AB.
Yeah, it's really good. I don't think I actually changed it that much apart from the T2 rigs, so I'm surprised we didn't see it more last season either.
I think perhaps we're seeing it more now that we have links in the format, and you can bring those skirmish links and really enhance the power of that afterburner.
Yeah, like a lot of people got like Ferroc on the grid anyway, so like boosting its signature and making it like down to something like 20 M3 or whatever it is, meters, whatever, makes it really, really tiny and it's really impossible for any battleships to hit it.
One thing like that is worth mentioning about links as well, while we're mentioning them, is that the difference between the armor ships and shield ones. I think most people would agree that at the viable armor battle cruisers, you've only got a limited set of links, and having only the Brutix with a skirmish link is a bit of a raw deal in comparison to having a Ferox with a skirmish link shield, and having the different options available to shield battle cruisers. I mean, in some ways, it's in the nature of the ships and how they're designed as well, but it definitely seems a little bit skewed one way rather than the other,
Yeah, I agonised over that quite a lot, and I think either making the Brutix railgun, which would go nicely with the skirmish, or switching the Harbinger to be skirmish with pretty powerful, I think. Maybe a bit too powerful.
I actually
Well,
think
it's the thing, really, isn't it? I mean, sorry to interrupt people that want to speak there, but just to mention this one, because this is one that really annoys me. Originally, in Fight Club, the Harbinger was beams, and the Ferox was blasters, I think it was originally. Or was it originally rails?
Yeah.
So you kind of had equal options for doing damage at range with a battle cruiser.
No, I think the Ferox was blasters, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the Ferox definitely started off as one, then it changed, and now it's changed again, if you know what I mean. So, but yeah, it almost feels like, because the Ferox has gone to rails now from blasters as it was last season, that the Ferox is great for range and everything, and the Harbinger is still a bit screwed, and the Brutix doesn't have rails anymore. So, or still doesn't have rails, so it's like still a bit screwed.
Why? I'm just curious. Like, ever since we've got like captains here, we can kind of like challenge them a little bit and make them squirm. Why did you pick a Brutix in your last match?
Why did I pick a Brutix?
Yeah.
Because I kind of felt I had to have skirmish links, and realistically, if Hoodie hadn't picked the Ferox, I'd have taken it in an armor comp. It's that good.
Yeah,
there you go.
That surprises me. Like, why? Because like we know that red team get blue team get battle cruiser first pick, which is obviously pretty strong. Which I'm really shocked that like no red teams banned Ferox, because like in the first set of bans, because to me that seems really obvious that you'd want to make sure that blue team does not have a Ferox. Like you said, it even goes well inside of an armor comp because it's got a decent amount of hit points.
You don't know they're going to take it. It's one of those that, like, the way the bans work at the minute. So if you're red, right, assuming blue is going to ban one of each logi, if you ban anything that's particularly good for shield or armor, then they can just pick the opposite way, and so you're wrong about you rather than them, if you know what I mean?
I know, but I was just commenting on the fact that you said you would take it in an armor comp, then why as red wouldn't you get rid of it and make sure it's not going to be an option regardless of what else of the ships they take, do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
However, with battle cruiser bans, couldn't you approach it and ban it after cruisers have been picked, when you know that they are going shield, and probably at that point you know you're going armor?
you could do that, but then you kind of don't want to waste that ban on a battle cruiser ban when you could ban a battleship. Because I mean, like the Ferox is really strong, but banning, for example, a Rock or a Tempest, I think, in my opinion, is worth more.
Yeah, exactly. It's all kind of a balancing act at that point.
And
I mean, if for instance you get to that point and you know you're facing a shield comp, what would you rather have to try and kill, a Ferox or a Rock, if you haven't already banned it? So it's kind of, what are you going to remove from the options of the other team?
yeah, definitely. And one thing that you should think about too is, if you ban a Ferox, they are going to pick either the Drake or the Cyclone or the Cane, or maybe not the Cane anymore, but yeah, both the Drake and the Cyclone are so incredibly strong too. And then you have to fight a ship, like for example a Cyclone, that is fast and has tackle. While the Ferox, I mean, it does DPS, but you can kind of ignore it if you're in a kiting comp. But if you have a Cyclone on the enemy team, and you have a Typhoon, for example, or a Mega, you cannot really run away from it. So I think Battlelog said it earlier, Shield just has so many good battlecruiser picks that banning one just makes the opponent pick the second best one, which is still incredibly good. So you want that ban for a battleship, and forcing, for example, like, say you have banned the Rock and the Tempest, and then you force your opponent into a Typhoon or, I don't know, a Maelstrom or so, which is, in my opinion, worth a lot more than like forcing them into the second best battlecruiser.
Have you guys discussed what matches you're looking forward to watching tomorrow? Like, I find it interesting to see who the Major League captains are kind of cheering on in the minor league.
So we've been practicing a bit with Power Ducks, so I'm going to cheer for you.
Yay!
But apart from that,
everybody cheer for Paradox. Woo.
You are 2-0
They
down.
need
I
it.
think like naturally we want to support the underdogs. So yeah, I don't think there's any.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
so
we've got
I would say
great
that
again and footwork. Interesting. Okay.
that was a pretty effective subject change there, Bay, from your bits and stuff. But
Sorry,
no,
yeah,
I mean, I kind
just
of.
felt that we'd done finished talking about Battle Cruisers. If we want to go back to it, Battle Dog, I can sit here and talk about them all.
No, it's all good. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm similar to Does it really? I'm kind of like the people that I practice with are the ones that I kind of want to do well, if you know what I mean. So it's always going to be that way because I've practiced with several minor league teams. So yeah, should be interesting.
who are you actually fighting tomorrow? Paradox.
We are fighting Metamar Great again and Footwork.
Okay.
I really want Make 'em Our Great Good to continue the trend of not ever having picked a Logi and winning.
I don't.
sorry, Paradox. And the other match I'm really looking forward to watching is Southern Otters versus Offline. So these are the two top teams of the minor league so far, and they play off against each other at 7:20 p.m. Eve time. So that'll be super exciting for me to watch. I think. Luckily, I think we've got enough staff for me to take a night off tomorrow, so I'll definitely be tuned in watching that one.
Yeah, I'm also curious how Templars goes, how they do. I haven't practiced with them yet, but yeah, we've seen them in the AT, and like they are completely new too, and yeah, they did like improve greatly the last few months. So I'm curious how they do.
It probably sounds weird, but I think I'm actually getting to a point where I'm almost screwed, kind of, as to who I want to win matches, because I think there's maybe 2 teams from the minor league, and I think there's maybe 1, possibly 2 teams from the major league that I either not practiced with already, or not planning to practice with yet, if you know what I mean. So it's a bit of a weird one there.
Team Johnny gets around, guys. You heard it here first.
Yeah, no kidding. I feel cheated on.
What can I say? We're in demand.
So I think a couple of us have to head out, so I will formally wrap this up on the stream. Do you guys have any shoutouts you want to do?
Big shout out to Kickstarter. We are still promoting it. There are still projects on there. Go check it out. It's a fantastic way to support your favourite streamers. Shout out to the guys who won 50 luxury yachts, not in real life but in game. They're going to be handed out and dealt with tonight. Same goes for the competition over the previous Major League where we're giving away a skin. Keep your eyes out on the Event Twitter and drop a follow on the Twitch. We're going to be giving away more things in the future, and it's the best way to keep up with all the action.
Anyone else?
Patron.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to my alliance mates in the band apart. But I don't think anybody's actually watching from those.
No, I think there are some of them. I thought
There's
I
always
saw.
the YouTube. We get quite a lot of YouTube views of this, so they might listen to you.
Ah, okay.
Hear the shout out later on.
Yeah, they are actually practicing at the moment, so won't disturb them.
Yeah, just a heads up to anyone who is watching. We beside the Kickstarter, we also have a Patreon. I think it's also linked under the stream window down there, where we also take, support mainly for EVNT, so we can continue giving you awesome websites like the one we just recently remodeled. So yeah, if you've got some spare support, that definitely would help us out.
The Patreon is in a little bit of a need of an update, but there will be one coming soon, courtesy of Nash Cadaver.
Sounds
Soon
good.
PM.
So the show tomorrow is back to its normal time, right? I'm correct in thinking that, yeah?
Yep.
The last one was a one-off time change, wasn't it?
Yeah, that one was changed because of the 07 show, but tomorrow it is at the normal time. And let's pray to the gods of technology that my clients don't crash.
Yeah. So normal time being 1900 start, right?
Yep. 1900, I think, is when the first match actually starts. So no, we go live a little before that as well, for like intros.
Does anybody know if we have any more new videos for the stream tomorrow? No,
think
the
I don't
last
know if
the
we'll
last
get it in
one had a
time,
slightly modified thing.
I think. Oh, which
You mean
we-
stats?
Yeah, I know Taldor's been working on something that might be
Yeah,
ready in
yeah,
time, like doing some little stats videos and clips. And stuff.
There will be stats videos. Yes.
Graph pawn, always good.
Alright, thank you all for joining me. If there's nothing else, I will turn off the Twitch chat, and you guys are more than welcome to stay in chat.
Yeah, thanks a lot for hosting this.
Yeah, no problem. Bye, team.